Topic is from deceptive to sustainable peace. What we see is deceptive, and as he said earlier also, we need sustainable peace. So what we all can do for that, that is the focus of today's session.
Well, let me say good morning once again to all of you because I'm sitting in a different place. The subject is from deceptive to sustainable peace. I would like to define deceptive in terms of peace, because very often we confuse local and time-limited peace to be adequate. If you have been reading the United Nations reports, it says over the last 5,000 to 7,000 years of human history, today is relatively peaceful in terms of the population strength we have. What they mean is, if 1 million people are killed every year on a population of 6 billion, is relatively peace. Whereas if 10,000 people are killed on an overall population of maybe 5 crore, it's not peace. That's what they mean. But the fact is, whether 1 million people are killed or one person is killed or maimed or put at a disadvantage, it's not peace. Every single human being needs to have the opportunity to carry out whatever he wants to do or he or she wants to do without interference from the others. Lack of peace is interference by busybodies in one's own activity, in a nation's own activities, in the pursuit of whatever one wants to do, as long as it doesn't hurt the others. So sustainable peace, as I said earlier, has got to be there for generations to come. Say, if you take the period of the Gupta period in 3rd century BC, for about 170 years, there was a degree of peace in the northern India, the part of the country which we today call northern India. And according to historians, then the progress of the communal progress, that is where the people felt comfortable, people felt safe, was relatively high. Today, do the people feel safe on our streets? They don't. Women feel much less safer than men do. Even men are not, they don't feel safe. When we were walking in London for the first time, we made a trip to the UK, we've been advised, if anybody starts passing comments behind your back, don't even turn back, much less offer any, make any response. Just get into a police station or a shop or some place with a large number of people and hide yourself. This is the kind of environment in which we are living. But if you see, except when you see the headlines in the newspaper in the morning, walking on the street or doing a job about, you feel there is peace. We are doing everything peacefully. It's not so. There is peace of a kind, but it's not universal and it's not sustained over a long period of time, which is what we need. Unless there is peace and harmony, we won't bring harmony into it right now, and the peace continues for a long time to come, there won't be any harmony and there won't be any sustainable progress. Today, we're all talking about progress being hindered. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Will we all get so much electricity? Can we all have roads enough to drive so many cars? It's right to want to own a car. Why not? Because it's a measure of material success. It's a measure of meeting an aspiration. But will you have so much fuel? Will you have so many roads? What will happen? It will be peaceful, but it won't be sustained for a long time. This is where we need to address the problem today. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we'll have now Anita Pratap, then we'll break for discussion. It should not be a monologue. And then Mr. M.C. Raj, followed by Mahesh Bhatt, and finally Jerry. So now I request Anita Pratapji to speak. 5-6 minutes to each speaker, and after her presentation, we'll have some questions from the floor. Thank you. Please.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here. This is not a presentation. I hope this is more like a dialogue. I mentioned yesterday how things have gotten a lot worse in the last 40 years, even at the school level. There is no doubt about the fact that people are more divided, and beneath the surface there is a lot of latent hostilities against each other on the basis of religion, caste, even language, region, so on and so forth. What has contributed to this deterioration in our civic ethos? Number one reason, as I analyze it, is the politics. Politics have become so divisive over this last 40-year period that we have been talking about. It is what we loosely call vote bank politics. So every party has to necessarily fight on the basis of one particular region or on the basis of Hinduism or Islam. So this has led to a poisoning of our political ethos. And that has led to, it has infected everyone. The whole body politic is infected by this. That's the number one reason. Number two reason, media has actually aggravated these conflicts and divisions. Now, as being part of the media, do not expect the media to be the Mother Teresa of journalism. That doesn't happen. It's not the role of the media to heal tensions in society. But likewise, it is not the role of the media to aggravate tensions. They should be just professional and report what is going on. But that's not happened. Part of this thing of improving their circulation or TRPs, they sensationalize and aggravate conflicts because that's the way people will read or watch television. Of course, this is not a problem just limited to India. I've seen how this has been a conflict and been a source of great problem in Sri Lanka or in any of the other conflict areas, and even in the United States. We have seen how the media is polarized with the political parties, and therefore it is an agenda that they are driving, and what this has happened is that it further polarizes society. So media has, far from being part of the solution, we have to recognize that media is part of the problem. I think there is a lot of unreasonable expectations placed on the media because people think media is going to solve all the problem. I think we have to wake up and smell the coffee and realize that the media is actually part of the problem, and therefore we have to deal with it. First, recognize that it is a problem. The third thing is that when the economy is down, tensions always rise because obviously politicians and the ruling situation set up cannot handle the economics of the situation, and so they divert the tactics by then pouncing on polarizing and emotional issues such as religion or caste. So whenever the economy goes down, you will find that tensions rise. When the economy is going really well, then the tensions tend to subside a little bit. But very often, what we have seen in the last 10 years in India, this galloping growth, economic growth, this is not economic growth in the real sense. This is just crony capitalism, and therefore it is not sustainable. This economic growth has not been shared by everyone. What I see is terrible disparity in this country, and that will definitely lead to the end of this society as we know it, because as I've always seen in my life, people can deal with poverty. What people cannot deal with is disparity, is inequality. Give you a small example. For instance, if you're in 3 lanes of traffic, if all the 3 lanes are stuck, you complain about the roads, you complain about the situation, but you don't complain against each other. But what happens when one lane starts moving and your lane is stuck? Your anger intensifies. You feel it's unfair. Why is that lane moving? You try to move on to that lane, and that causes further chaos. So if everybody is about to move, then it's fine. If everybody is stopped, that's also bearable. It's not a good situation, but it's bearable. But what is completely unacceptable is one lane starts moving and the other one is stuck. And that's what's happening in this country. The rich have gotten so much richer, the poor have remained where they are or have actually gotten worse. The middle class certain sections have risen great deals, but the other hasn't. And that is going to create an unstable society, and instability leads to unsustainable paths. The other aspect about conflict, what are the endemic roots of conflict? It's the 3 I's, as I always talk about. It is injustice, it is inequality, and